It is overtime here again at Old Favorite Friday, and I am joined by head brewer Ralph Renault, and we are talking about a beer that I've got. This is a weird episode. Do we call these episodes? I don't know what we call them. But this is a weird Old Favorite Friday because we are discussing Sam Adams' Boston Lager. And many of you in the craft beer industry know this already, but they've changed the formula. The Boston Lager that's coming out now has been tweaked in some way. I actually have a couple bottles of that. We're going to try that here in just a second. But I guess we always wanted to do Boston Lager and an Old Favorite Friday, but we take it for granted that this beer has been the same for so many years, and we always had the opportunity to do so. So, now we know the beer is going to change. Well, I really want to try a Boston Lager, a traditional Boston Lager if we can, and discuss it a little bit. So that's one thing I want to do. And then I do want to try the other one side by side and do a little comparison and see what our thoughts are. So a little bit different format here, but in general, Boston Lager, probably the beer that created the craft beer revolution
for sure.
in this country. Boston Beer Company makes incredible beers. We featured many of them on Old Favorite Friday. I mean, we talk about Old Fezziwig, Holiday Porter that come out in the winter time. So many beers. There's just the Summer Ale. I mean, just the Oktoberfest. They're just wonderful, wonderful beer. So great brewery. One of the standard standby old faithful beers that you can get is Boston Lager. What are your thoughts on Boston Lager, Ralph?
Yeah, so I was gonna definitely agree with what you're saying in the way I was gonna say it's kind of a seminal beer for craft beer, where back in the day when, I was trying to get into craft or thought like, oh, I wanna, be fancier, drink something more than just like, some of the yellow fizzy kind of waters that they call them. But this, I would just, I'd go out, like if I was with friends, go into a restaurant or a bar, and I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna get a Sam Adams. At the time, like when you're in your early 20s, you're like, I'm being classy, I'm drinking a Sam Adams. So like, it's such a great beer, and the fact that it's changing to me is, in a way, it's a little bit sad. The new beer could be amazing, but it was just like you said, you always expect, that's like Old Faithful, you always expect it to be there. But yeah, this is just a beer I haven't had in a while, and I'm glad I have the opportunity to now, because, this will probably be the last time, but it is such a quintessential beer when it comes to craft beer.
So I was lucky enough to have, there's a couple of 6-packs at the store that I went to of the new and of the classic. And this is not old beer, by the way. I want to make sure this is Best by May of 2023. So it's not like we're judging a beer that's been on the shelf for forever. One thing I will say about this, and the things that I've always loved about Boston Lager, is, and I drink it a little more often. I drink this beer, it's not in my fridge every day, right? I drink mostly Barrel of Monk's beer because I own a brewery, you drink your own beer. But I do drink this beer somewhat regularly. One thing that I have noticed from the last time I had it is that I don't feel like it is as hoppy as I remember. I feel like there's a dialed down nature of the bitterness. Now, that could just be my own perception. I'm not saying that that's 100% true, but I wonder if there was some kind of transition that Boston Lager has gone through in recent months or years, because I remember Boston Lager being a little bit more bitter, a little more hop forward. What I do love is the color, the maltiness, the biscuitiness of that more amber lager. One of my favorite styles. And from what I have been told about the new formulation is that's one of the things they've cut out. It's a lighter beer in general. But do you have anything to add about the malt level of this beer?
Yeah, that actually, because what I was gonna say is I even know with some of the directions, even with their other brands that Sam Adams has taken, I could see them now, because I'm definitely getting that like hop flavor when I take a sip. But no, what I would think of is more of a, I don't want to say bracing bitterness, but a firm bitterness is definitely not there. Like I'm getting more of a biscuity malt. So in that way, it almost is elevating the malt, because there's not, like you said, I've definitely felt like I got more of a bittering in past years. And I know even with some of their hoppier styles, they're starting to go for that, like, no IBUs kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely, to me, this is like a crackery, but you can get the lager aspect because it's like you could just chug this. So it's not anything like a brown or an amber ale where those tend to be heavier. But yeah, I'm really liking the interplay of, because and I don't know the hops they use, but it has like a noble characteristic on the flavor. So even with the bitterness being on the play between just that almost like, literally if you think of like American biscuits and that kind of like flavor of this like herbal kind of spicy character. They really go well together.
Well, since it's classic beer, and if that is the case, if the bitterness has been dialed back, that's a choice that a brewery makes, and obviously they're doing this for a reason. And I'm not here to judge that choice, right? Mm-hmm. But I will say is that it is sad to lose, in whatever capacity, a change in recipe or what have you. It is sad to lose a classic beer, even though it obviously will continue to go on, and it's understandable. We've seen this. We featured Fat Tire, New Belgium Fat Tire on Old Flavor Friday before. Obviously, classic beer. They're undergoing a reformulation, which I also believe is toning down the color and making it more of a blonde beer. It's what the market apparently wants, and evolving. Nothing wrong with that. And also, just be honest with this, craft beer in general is always evolving. I like to use the example of Dogfish Head, 60 Minute. I cannot tell you when and how the changes have happened, but 60 Minute has evolved in the time from the first batch to what you get on the store shelves today. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, just from recipe formulation and changing brew houses, and there's a lot of things on the technical side, but then you just have like the drift of what the goals of the brewer are and the business, and how they may start to reduce IBUs a little bit if they find that that's going to be more palatable for the market. So this is not a new thing of changing and reformulation, but I feel like this is one of the more out there, because they're saying, it says, on the bottle, remastered right here. Mm-hmm. The 6-pack, they are not hiding this. They are telling you that this is a reformulation of the beer, and they're couching it. This is what we want to do. What we think is better. So it's not like they're just like sweeping on the rug, hope that no one notices. And probably because the changes will be from this version to that so much more drastic. Listen, love Boston Lager, love Boston Beer Company. Love this beer, and really have a little bit of myself that feels like I'm going to miss out on it. But now let's just crack one of these bad boys open. I want to see the color next to each other and see what this remastered beer is all about.
All right.
So we can see it's not drastically different. Not really drastically different at all, color-wise. Yeah. Maybe what I have heard is completely inaccurate. I would say that those are almost identical.
Yeah.
So there's the traditional one. This is really exciting, I'm sure, just watching us taste the beers and not say anything, but
it's like a beer review on YouTube. There you go.
Yeah. I'm looking at these bottles. I know for a fact that this one says remastered, and other than that, there's not really much difference. And I'm not getting a huge difference in the beer. What are you tasting, Ralph?
And I think it's probably the malt, but if anything, actually, now that I am having them side by side, this new one to me is definitely cleaner.
Yeah.
So I don't know if maybe it was a misconception that the bitterness is gone, because it's not so much bitter, but like I said, it's almost like a roasty character, but I almost don't want to use that term because it's not strong enough, and when people think roast, they think like stout, so it's not that strong, but compared to this is like super clean. Like if I didn't see the color, I'd be like, maybe this was just like straight Pilsner malt or something, and then just that was, but it's obviously darker than that, but it's.
Yeah, I think that, so first of all, I am a little bit blown away because of the way that this is not their advertising, this is not their words, this is how I've heard this related to me about this beer. So I was very shocked that the color is so consistent. And there is plenty of malt flavor here, but it is, I think you hit the nail on the head. I felt like the hop bitterness was so far down on what I would call an original version.
Yeah.
And now tasting it side by side by the remastered version, I get the presence of those hops.
Yeah.
And that a little more bitterness. So that's the main thing that I'm seeing, and that cleanliness of the palate. Like it's just more crisp, more refreshing, as opposed to leaving that lingering bitterness and hop flavor on the tongue.
Yeah, if I were to be blindfolded, like if I didn't see the color, I would never know that this beer, and it's not a dark beer, but that even it's an amber anything, just because of the flavor profile. I think they did a really good job because it's almost like looking at it and then taking a sip. It's almost like a mind trick.
Yeah, it's a much smaller change than what I was expecting, and I think it's a good beer. I will say that if I thought that what we're calling the original right here, the one that it was made before the remastered, if I thought that was a little bit low in bitterness, I obviously think that leaving less is not preferential to my palate.
Yeah.
Right. If I had my choice, I would go with the original here. But just like we talk about, just first of all, that's my perception. Who cares what I think? But that doesn't mean that something that you don't prefer is not good.
Yeah.
Right. This is a good beer. This is a nice, clean beer. Still offers some malt flavor. A little bit cleaner. I'd say a little simpler, a little more straightforward. Probably going to appeal to more people. And as a business, I mean, how can you go against that?
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. I could see where this would be maybe because I'm in agreement with you, where I like hoppy things, I like bitter things. So to me, there's more complexity in the old one. So it's something I'd like to unpack more of and go back to and have another one. This though, I could see for just the general public being a super easy drinker. I could see the idea being like you have 4 or 5 of these, not even realize how many beers you've had, and that's kind of more what they're going for.
To use a term that I hate, is crushable,
Yeah.
right? So this is the newer reformulation here is a little more crushable. We've used the term clean and crisp, but I think all those are apt there. And yeah, I don't know how much more to say about it. I really have a deep love for this brand because, like many people, it was a introductory kind of beer. If it wasn't your first craft beer, it was certainly probably your fourth, right? You know, this Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, beers like that really laid the foundation for everything that we do and everything that is done in the craft beer community. I was a little skeptical and a little scared when I heard that it was being reformulated. I feel a lot more comfortable with that now, for whatever that's worth, whatever my opinion is, because I still think, I was worried that it was going to be a unoffensive blonde lager that was reformulated to really be essentially a macro beer. And I don't think they did that. I think that they made a good craft lager with good malt flavor, probably a little less bitterness than I like, but it's still a good beer.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for indulging us, and I hope you enjoyed the video comparing these two beers. I highly recommend, if they're still on your store shelves, the older, classic version of Boston Lager, go out and pick one out. Enjoy it. I'd encourage you to do the same thing we did. Buy 1 6-pack of each one, try them side by side and see what you think. I'd love to hear anybody that actually goes out and does that. Give us a little shout out here. Insert a comment. Tell us what you felt about that. And also, please, as always, go around to our other videos on our YouTube page, our other Old Favorite Friday videos where we discuss in depth these classic beers. And please tell us what we should be drinking next week for Old Favorite Friday. We will see you next week, and cheers.
Cheers.